Against the darkness, two heroes will rise. They will come from worlds apart, bound together by magic and cursed by fate. For this has been foretold, and this will come to pass. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I am your host, Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'll be reviewing Gurzel, Book 1 and the Wars of Wrath. Gurzel is a 2022 novel written by Anonymous, or Nemo, Autis, and Noman, which are just ways of declaring anonymity in Latin, Greek, and English, respectively. It is historical fiction, and specifically historical fantasy with a focus on legend. And in this story we have epigraphs taken from historical pieces of antiquity and the Middle Ages, such as Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, the Book of Enoch, the Aeneid, the History of the Wars of Justinian, Lemort d'Arthur, Beowulf, and more. In the prologue, we are first introduced to Hamilcar Barca, general of the Carthaginian forces who were in Sicily, warring against the Romans in the First Punic War for several years. The year is 237 BC, and that conflict is over, and Spain is the stage for the next. Back in Tunisia, Hamilcar comes into focus after raging against the Carthaginian Senate, and he goes to speak with his son, Hannibal. We also meet Reaver, who is an interesting Briton, a Celt whose real name is unknown to his master, though the revealing of his name is quite stunning if you recognize it. We also meet Gurzel, a being worshipped as a god and viewed as a demon and monster of death and fire. He is a dragon. Gurzel is actually a historically attested deity of Berber origin. In the story, he is a magnificent enemy in the vein of Glaurung from the children of Hurin, mixed with the devil, the old serpent. We then fast forward several centuries where the fall of Rome is very briefly touched on, with the focus on the Vandals, almost certainly because they were the Germanic tribe that would come to rule over what the Barcas had once ruled. So that's the connection. Of course, lots and lots of history is left out, but it's not pertinent to the story. Then the year is 543 AD, and we meet King Alba of Selene, which is a Berber, or rather a Mazak city-state around an oasis in North Africa, specifically Algeria, as he thinks back on 536, which some historians consider to be the worst year to have been alive. His people call it Darkening. Alba lives a drugged life, like a dream. He's sort of a Nel-Nibanaean living in Dor-Loman under Broda of the Easterlings, though Broda here is the leader of the dark cult of Gurzel, Yerna. Alba has lost his wife to sickness, and his daughter has fled for her life. In a despairing haze, Alba remains a figurehead ruler of Selene. Sabra, his daughter, is one of the key figures of the book. And you don't get to know her completely right away, and since this book is rather actually short, it is not even 300 pages, you don't get a lot of her as much, well, you don't get as much as I would like, but when she does show up, she is strong in both will and on the field of battle. She also has the gift of foresight through dreams, and this is rather important to the story. And the next we go to Britain, though, where we meet our other main character, who is George Bertolak, a Romano-Briton, descendant of St. George of Lydda, the patron saint of England, and further back the legendary King Lear, who comes from the line of Brutus of Troy. George is a haute desert of Sir Gawain and Green Knight fame, but is also mixed with Owen Maburian, son of the King of Reged. So he is the Prince of Kelemian in the story. He's a bit hot-headed at the age of 22, and his squire is actually a young Sir Gawain. Urien is George's father, and he plays the role of the Green Knight, though not like in the tale, but kind of an allusion to it. While Urien and George have a variety of foes among the Britons, their main foe here and who they're facing off against is King Cedric of Wessex, who is based off of King Ceredic of Wessex, the first king of the West Saxons, and George hopes for help from King Uther Pendragon of Camelot, though this is someone that they normally do not get along with. In this area, we also have Merlin as another character we get this perspective of reading through. He is a sort of hedge wizard and is one of the last of the druids. Back around Sabra's world, we have Gundris, who is leader of the Vandal remnant. I don't believe he is based off a historical figure, but I could easily be wrong on that. He's very realistic, and there could have well been a man like him with a different name, or the same. He is definitely not a morally good character, though. He's a slaver, and that trade was all too common at this time period. We also have the Lady Morgana, who is, generally with George. She is a witch and princess of the Denoni. I'm not actually sure how to say that, but it's a Celtic kingdom about where Exeter, Cornwall type area. And so she is also the stepdaughter of Uther. Urien of Gore is George's father. And Eldal, a legendary figure from Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regnum Britanniae, and Gildas is also present in this story as well. So a bunch of famous people from Arthurian legend, essentially. We also have some Volsons present with the Vandals, and Grendel and Grendel's mother even make an appearance as well. And their interpretation and adaptation to the work fits really well for those who might worry about that if you're a fan of Beowulf. This is a dark adult novel. It doesn't really play around. It's brutal with cruel characters and went and running to ruin as a sort of entropy takes hold over once great lands, and once kind and good or even average people turn to evil. It's a nice new modern Arthurian legend connected to the classical world, like the late medieval works of a similar vein. It's the heroic age where Celts and Germanic peoples and Byzantines met. It almost feels like it could be a sequel to Tolkien's Middle-earth, one where the world is now recognizable to us and only a shadow of the peoples are still around. Oh, and one notable dragon, though this isn't actually the case, of course. And I don't say that lightly at all, and I don't mean in every way. In classic heroism, it meets this better than most modern fantasy authors, but the doughty warriors are more likely to curse and swear than to make or recite poetry. That being said, it doesn't have any modern heroes. There's no Frodo or Bilbo, or Thomas Covenant, or even a Kaladin or Shallan, but it still connects just fine, but not in a modern way beyond that it reads easily, is entertaining, and we could still give something, or get something from stories in some piece or way already familiar to us. Oh, and I guess probably it being rather dark is probably a rather modern theme as well. Beyond that, we have so many great parts that I'm just going to touch on some rather quickly. We have the Mazik, who are somewhat similar if you've read, and this is unsurprisingly, to the Fremen from Frank Herbert's Dune. And this is mostly showcased in the characters of Caboan and Sabra, who were both really great, and I can't wait for more Amazic characters in the next book. And then something familiar to both a modern reader and one from hundreds and thousands of years ago is the concept of fate, of a doom or weird or destiny that is unavoidable. This is a lot at times tied up with the magic of the world, a little bit with Merlin and Arthur that we see, and mostly with Gurzel. Now, the characters are great and beautifully human. They are well realized and developed and easy to connect with and recognizable as heroes. We also have a character like Unahild, though, who is a Vandal priestess and is rather a good character we have in the Web of People factions and places, though she's rather twisted. She's actually really messed up. She's kind of disturbing. You have to read it to understand what I mean. So, in reality, though, the story is full of gray characters, some very likable, others quite pitiable. There are so many sides in a story not told from one single side, and they're so far removed that our modern allegiances don't really touch on them, and I found myself rooting for lots of people. Not Gurzel, though, and there's just so many characters. This is a really short book. It's a really kind of like volume 1 of a grander book, and I can't wait to get to part 2. The magic is good, coming from the likes of Morgana and Kuhina and some others. There are also were-hyenas, which are also pretty cool. There's a more technical name for them, but you wouldn't recognize it. Likely, anyways. A minor gripe that mostly comes down to personal taste and is completely understandable is when the Vandals use Germanic terms or say short amounts of dialogue. It's in modern High German, and I understand for convenience. This is rather a popular happening in media showcasing ancient Germanic peoples, but something more akin to Gothic or Proto-Germanic, what have you, would have been cool. But I understand Gothic's not easy. But it is cool that the Saxons do speak in Old English and the pre-Vikings speak in Old Norse. Another gripe is the amount of flashbacks that are rather long and take up so much of certain chapters. These are okay. I mean, I don't have a problem with the writing at all. And they really do help with knowing what is going on by knowing what has previously happened, but it sort of made this book feel like a setup, like one giant setup, like a chapter 1, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but just a forewarning. It really, what it made me do is, it really is making me itch to read book 2, and I can't do that yet. So anyways, the book has not actually released yet. It will release on March 2nd, so take note. I would like to thank the author, though I don't have a name, for giving me a copy of the book. This is the first arc I've received since I made my channel, and I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed reading the book. It means a lot, and I really, really, really enjoyed it, to say the least. Yeah, honestly feels like this book was written for me. Anyways, I do look forward to more from Sabra and George, and not to mention all the other characters. Anyways, this has been Liam with Liam's Lyceum. Let me know if you plan on reading this book, if you were able to get an arc as well. Maybe you have already read it. So let me know what your thoughts are, and yeah, feel free to discuss this with me. Anyways, I'll catch you next time.